I'm going to share today with you an ancient Indian story about obsession and developing the right perspective, right? It's a story that might help you in your life, help you see things a little differently. So there was this old city and they had a very different way of governance. They selected a king. It was part of a raffle. So every 5 years, they would draw everybody, all the residents of the city would come and pull their name out, and on random, they would select a king. And that king for 5 years could rule the kingdom, and he or she would just enjoy all the luxuries that came with being king, right? Of course, they would get to live in a big palace and it'd be just a wonderful life. They could just enjoy it. Now, think about this. It is sort of like the Powerball, right? It's the biggest lottery in the land, and everyone fantasized about it. All they wanted to do in their lives was pray that they would win the raffle. So the system went on for several years. There were, 5 to 6 kings came and went, and part of the contract was they wanted to make sure that they had term limits, that the king would not extend his or her term. So the contract was after 5 years, the king would be taken across the river to an island which was populated with all kinds of wild animals, which meant the king would be eaten alive. I'm not sure if we would take that deal, but in that city, people were not worried about it. They wanted to enjoy the life of luxury, even if it was for 5 years, right? So this went on for 5 or 6 years. They selected a king, and after 5 years, the king would be transported across the island, and they would never hear from the king again. One year, the city happened to select a very wise man. His name came up, and he became king. He ruled for 5 years as a very just king, a very wise man. And then when the 5 years were up, all the people in the city gathered outside the palace. It was time for the king to leave. And the king came down. He came down the palace steps, and he was in a good mood, cheering, hugging people, high-fiving, just smiling end to end. And people were happy. He was a just king. They took him to the edge of the river. There was a boatman who traditionally took the king across the river, and they handed over the king to the boatman. The boatman started taking the king across the river, and then when they had reached about halfway, the boatman asked the king, he said, "Oh, my king, are you okay?" And the king replied, "Yeah, I'm perfectly fine. Why do you ask?" The boatman replied, he said, "I have taken 5 kings before you across the island. And by the time I get to about halfway, they are so terrified about what awaits them that they want to jump off the boat. But the contract says I have to deliver them to the island. So what I have to do is tie a rope, physically restrain them, because they cannot jump off the boat." He said, "Oh, my king, have you forgotten what lies ahead for you? Are you in the right frame of mind?" And the king replied, he had a big smile. He said, "Oh, my good boatman, the previous kings, they had fantasized about being king. And the day that their lottery came, they won the raffle, they became king, they began enjoying the luxuries. And they got so obsessed with the luxuries, they had fantasized about it, and they were so obsessed, all their time was spent just caught up in those luxuries. They forgot what awaited them at the end of the 5 years." My boatman, I enjoyed the luxuries. I enjoyed all the luxuries. I ruled wisely, but I never forgot that this day would come. And so, my good boatman, I have, for the past 5 years, have been working on having all the animals, the wild animals, the dangerous animals on that island killed. I have built a palace on that island. My family is already there waiting for me. If you don't mind, would you hurry up so I can go join them? The boatman, of course, is stunned and takes the king to the island, and the king jumps off the boat and runs off to live a beautiful life. What a simple story, but what an important story. We get obsessed in life and we lose perspective, right? When we get obsessed with whatever we are doing, we get obsessed with living this material life, we forget that we need to prepare for the time when this will end. What is the palace that you and I need to build across the river on that island? What is it that we need to work on now? We need to enjoy our life. We need to work hard. We need to enjoy our life. But what is the palace that you and I need to build? Think about that. The palace that you and I need to build is connecting with our own spirituality, the spirituality that is within us, that is much bigger than the life that we are living now. We are so caught up in our lives. We are so obsessed with either our problems or our pleasures. We maybe have a good life, maybe we have a lot of money, we have a good family, we're just enjoying having a blast. Or we are struggling in life, unhappy in life. Either scenario, we are so consumed and obsessed with the life we have. We're not thinking about, how do I prepare myself? How do I build a palace? How do I connect with the spirituality that is within me? How do I connect with that internal bliss, which is the permanent palace? Because this life, just like the 5-year term, is limited. But when we begin to connect with our bliss and our infinite peace that is inside us, we build our everlasting palace. This story is part of my audiobook, Happy Soul, Hungry Mind. This is part of chapter 3 called The Hungry Mind. If you're interested, please listen to the entire chapter. It is available on YouTube in this channel, Spirituality Within channel. Listen to it. Give me feedback. Think about how we are obsessed. We are obsessed at 2 levels. We are obsessed at our entire whole life level, but many times we also get obsessed. It may be a project at work. It may be somebody with whom we have a difference of opinion, or some friend who is no longer a friend, and we obsess about how that relationship has changed, right? Sometimes we obsess about differences of opinion with our spouse or kids or family members, right? We develop some kind of animosity with neighbors or whoever, and we get so obsessed and we forget the big picture. Because whatever that obsession is, that will not last. It will go by. If you are, my age, then you have seen life and you have said, look, I have been so upset at certain times in my life, or I've been so consumed with certain things, good and bad. But they all, like the waves in this beautiful lake behind us, they all wash away. And so develop this perspective, develop this larger perspective. Watch yourself. Ask yourself honestly. Ask yourself if you're obsessed, right? If you have lost perspective and you're so caught up in something, Wake up, stop, and think, and say, do I need to look at the bigger picture? Namaste. At your core, you are peace. Be who you are. Be peace. Be peace.